has in store for us today. All right. This is the beginning of a new study. It's called the Ancient Israelite or the Galilean Wedding, biblical study through the lens of an Israelite living in Judea in the first century. This is probably, actually, it is the first time in which I present this new study, because I did add a couple more slides compared to the last time I actually made this or presented this study. It's been, I think it's been 2 years kind of thing. So bear with me, and you're going to learn a lot because I did. And now I'm going to share all this information to you. All right. Now here's what we're going to cover, technically speaking. Now, as you read the New Testament, mainly the New Testament, you got some passages in the Old Testament dealing with wedding languages or language, which we will cover in this study as well. But mostly is found in the New Testament. Granted, yes, if you combine Old and New, the entire Bible itself has many references to the customs, the idioms, concepts, and metaphors of marriage. Okay, the information that I'm about to share with you in this study, in this presentation, is to help you understand the process of an Israelite Galilean wedding and the uncanny parallels in which the Messiah, or the Anointed One of Yahweh, performed during his ministry and beyond. You will also see some resemblance to our current marriage practices. You think that we invented marriage as far as the altar, the process on how the man gives the ring to the woman a ring to the man, all that stuff, that comes from all Israelite and some other cultures, of course, perspectives and customs and traditions. Now, we're going to cover a lot of topics, and these include the following. Granted, we're going to define the terms, like always. Terminology is the key to understanding Scripture, based per the author's perspective. We're going to go into historical backdrop and just about everything concerning the marriage concept. Who selects the bride? What is the significance of the cup of the covenant? Why did he get baptized, that is, Yahusha, or Jesus, if he was without sin, okay? Because people don't understand the main purpose as to why he did it, okay? The next one, number 6, why did Yahusha, or Jesus, leave his bride? What is that? Where did that concept come from? What is the significance behind that? We're going to cover the wedding contract. Again, it's a repeat cup of the covenant. The king and his son parable, a little bit of that. We're going to cover the 10 bridesmaid parable. We're going to go into detail on that one. Why do we have to wait for the bridegroom to come? And when and where is the wedding supper of the Lamb? And of course, this is just 12, but there's a lot more that we're going to cover, okay? So hang on tight. At the end of this particular study, it's a definite 100% the greatest love story that you have ever seen. Okay? And without any further ado, let us begin the ancient Israelite or Galilean wedding study. All right, still in an introduction. Now, Yahweh tells us of the marriage covenant that he kept between himself and Israel, even though his chosen people, Israel, did not keep that covenant with Yahweh. And this is found in Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 32. Not like the covenant I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Mizraim. That means Egypt in Hebrew. My covenant which they broke, though I was a husband to them, declares Yahweh. See, you can see the wedding language here. Yahweh is the bridegroom, and Israel is actually the bride. Okay? Now, Elohim and his people, technically, the whole entire Bible is about his people. Okay? At the time, granted, Yahweh selects a chosen I should say, selects Abraham and his descendants to be his so-called people at a certain given time in, well, it will be our past, but technically it will be Abraham's future. All right. Now, throughout the centuries, we have lost our Hebraic perspective. And this study, since we started with the paradigms, is to get you to get the basics of that knowledge. And do not see Yahusha or Jesus in his original first century Judean content. We have made him more like an Englishman. Depending on where you live, over here we made him more like an American. If you were living in Russia, it would be more like a Russian. So depending on your location, you tend to be biased and relate or associate Jesus to that culture. Okay, it happens to all of us. That's why these studies I start with the paradigms to break that barrier, to get you into that particular mindset in the first century. Now, keep in mind that Yahusha or Jesus is not just a Judean, but he grew up with the traditions and customs of a Galilean or Galilean, depending on how you want to pronounce that. Now, granted, Yahusha follows the steps of a Galilean bridegroom in the first century, that is, in taking himself a bride. And people in the first century, his disciples, understood this. We, in the so-called 20th or 21st century, we don't, because we lost that connection of Hebraic roots. Our major goal is to reestablish that Israelite understanding. Okay. And I'll quote Isaiah 61:10. I greatly rejoice in Yahweh. My being exalts in my Elohim. For he has put garments of deliverance on me. He has covered me with the robe of righteousness. As a bridegroom decks himself with ornaments, and as a bride adorns herself with her jewels. Okay, nice poetic stanza there. All right, now we're done with the basic introduction. Now let's get into it. Now, the bridal relationship. Now, marriage is an institution. It is a covenant created by Yahweh. Everybody agrees with that. There's no denying that. Marriage is between, and I emphasize this because in today's culture is way out of whack, is between one man, one woman, and Yahweh. When it comes to polygamy or other alternative marriages, it's not biblical. Sorry, I don't care what people say, but I'm not the creator. You're not the creator, so the creator makes the rules, and that's how he sets it up. One man, one woman. That's it. And this is very clear in Genesis chapter 2, verse 22 to 24. And the rib which Yahweh Elohim had taken from the man, he made into a woman. And he brought her to the man. And the man said, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. This one is called woman, because she was taken out of man. For this cause a man shall leave his father and mother and join unto his wife, and they shall become one flesh. This particular passage is quoted by Yahusha or Yeshua in Matthew chapter 19, verses 4 to 6, and also in Mark chapter 10, verse 6 through 9. Now, what is this, and they shall become one flesh? Let me bring Mark 10:9 for a minute here. Mark 10, actually, is pretty much the same as Matthew as well. But this one's from Matthew 19, verse 6. So that they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what Elohim has joined together, let no man not separate. So what again is one flesh? And what is the concept of what Elohim has joined together? Let no man not separate. Well, if you're paying attention back in the Old Testament as well in the first century, it's all the one flesh is dealing with the baby. Not necessarily too much on marriage, but the baby. Now, yes, it is true when a man and woman are together or lay together, there is a spiritual connection there that is made between those two individuals. But as they become one flesh, that is dealing with the baby. And if you know, Elohim joined the male and the female to create this new soul or this new being, this new living creature. No one can split the DNA of that baby. That's what this particular sentence is saying. Let no man not separate, because we cannot separate the genetic code of this baby. Whatever Yahweh puts together, you cannot separate. That's what's dealing with this. Now, as far as divorce is concerned, as you know, back in Old Testament, when Moses was making the decision whether a person should get a divorce or not, legally, Yahweh is not for divorce. He never was. He hates divorce. Because of our sinful nature, Moses decided to go ahead and allow a person to get divorced by pretty much writing a petition or some kind of a contract, and to make that finalized. But Yahweh does not like divorce. He hates it with a passion. Okay, because you hurt each other when you split, especially when it comes to the children. Now, the idea in the Old Testament is to procreate. That's why marriage was so essential. Okay, it's pretty much to maintain the human race. When you get married, you have children. Granted, not everyone can have children. You can see that when it came to Sarah and some other women in the Old Testament and the New Testament too, because the mother and father of John the Baptist, she had a hard time actually having a child. And back in the ancient culture, being barren, they look at you as being cursed. Okay, and Sarah, she was very old when she had Isaac. But that's we'll cover a little bit more in detail on that later on in this study as well. Now, Genesis chapter 1, verse 28. This is where you get the idea of procreation. Multiply, bear fruit and increase, and fill the earth and subdue it, and rule over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the Shamayim, and over all creatures moving on the earth. Technically, we pretty much rule the earth. That is pretty much our function, to subdue it, take care of it, cultivate, maintain it, and produce so we can be maintained. Okay, so the whole deal here is to bear fruit and increase. It's all about procreation, maintaining the human race. Now, any other alternative marriages that does not bear fruit or increase is not allowed. Of course, why? Well, you know why. Because the reason we procreate is because we don't live forever. Okay, we are mortal. The only one that is actually immortal, that lives forever and ever, as far as we define eternity, is only Yahweh. He is the only eternal being, creator of all things. Okay? Yeah, let me move this out of the way here so I can see what's going on. Okay, so marriage is considered the most intimate of all human relationships. Yes, this is true, psychologically and spiritually, and of course physically. Okay. It is a picture of the intimacy in which a believer can have with Yahweh. I'm not talking about sexually, but spiritually. I'm talking about that aspects of things. Because people will take this out of context and say, you're a pervert. No. Just think it spiritually. Okie dokie. Now, different types of love. Now we're going to define a lot of terms that you will find in the Old Testament as well as in the New Testament. Now, as you know, our culture, the Western culture, we tend to use the term love in a general perspective. Depending on the sentence is used, then we can determine what kind of love are we talking about. But in the Old Testament as well as in the New Testament, they have different words for different types of love. Of course, our English translation does not convey that particular meaning because we use that term love for just about anything. But when you read it on its original context, then you can get the meaning of what the author is trying to say, what kind of love it is. So the first one that you will find in the Old Testament is ahav, which is Strong Concordance 157 and 158. The meaning of ahav is to have affection for, it could be sexually or otherwise, be loved like a friend. You know, you can say ahav a friend. You can love a friend, but not sexually, just you can love a friend, okay? It's Strong Concordance 158. It states that it's an affection in good or bad sense. So it can go either way, depending on the narrative. Right, the next one that you find that's also common is ahava, which is Strong Concordance 160. It means the same thing as 158. But the ahava seems to be the most common one that you will see in the Old Testament. Now, the verb is used to describe a parent's attachment to a child, but not the other way around. This also can be applied to an attraction that exists between a man and a woman, but this verb can also be used to describe what impels someone to rape someone else. Okay. The next one is raham, which is Strong Concordance 7355. This one is technically to have compassion on or upon, love, find, have, obtain, shew, mercy or merciful, on or upon, have pity. Usually it will be the latter, have mercy or have pity. Okay, raham, that's how you pronounce it. Okay, it is often used to describe a parent's devotion to a child and subsequently also Yahweh's devotion to mankind. In other words, he has mercy upon us. Raham, okay, or pity. Compassion, depending on what it is, depending on the narrative. The next one is dod. Hebrew Strong Concordance 1730. This one is to love, a lover. It could be a friend, dod. Could be beloved, beloved. It could also mean uncle or father's brother. It all depends on how the author uses it on the sentence. So dod. And this is where we get, guess what? The name David, David. It comes from dod. The only thing that changes is if you notice the vav, it has this particular dot is referred to in Hebrew as the hirik. So this is an I, or in the Hebrew would be E. So David. That's the only thing that changes. You see the consonants are the same. Dalet, Vav, Dalet. That's it. Okay. And David, that's why David means beloved. It's taken from the root dod. The next one in the Hebrew Bible is Yada. Yada. This means to know. Okay. Now, Yada can also be used for making love. Genesis chapter 4, verse 1. So when you lay with a woman, that's a sexual overtone. That's making love. You're making love to a woman. Okay. The next one in the Old Testament is Raya. Raya is Strong Concordance 7474. It's off the root from 7453. It could mean a female associate. It could be a fellow or love. Most likely the former, female associate or fellow. Or depending on how it's used in the narrative. The next one is ona. This one should sound familiar to you, okay? Because if you paid attention on the appointed times of Yahweh, the rabbis and even Yahusha, Jesus, use a rabbinic idiom to tell a segment of time, which was referred to as ona. That's why I said back then, don't get this confused with the other term ona that actually is found in the Old Testament. And this one's from Strong Concordance 5772. It means to dwell together sexually, cohabitation, the duty of marriage. When you get married, there's something you do sometimes at night. Yeah, there you go. That's your duty. That's the same thing as making love. Okay? Sexual cohabitation. So this is not the same. Again, it's not the same as the idiom in which the rabbis used to use in the first century. When it comes to ona idiom, okay, they also can refer it as onot, which can mean more than just one time segment. That's the plural form of ona for the idiom. As far as for this one, it stays ona, and depending on the context or how it's spelled, if it's I'm making love to you kind of thing, then of course the author will specify that. Now, let's go into the New Testament. The first one is Greek Strong Concordance 5387, and this one is storge. This one is love and affection that naturally occurs between parents and children, can exist between siblings and between husbands and wives in a good marriage. So in other words, if I want to say I love my children, I will use in the Greek language storge, because it's family oriented. That's the kind of love I have for my child. It's storge. It's not going to be the same. There's another Greek word, I think it's erotica, which we get erotic from. You're not going to find that in the New Testament, but that seems to be the more the Greek term for the sexual activity of a particular couple. Okay. The next Greek word that you will find in the New Testament as well is Strong Concordance 5368, phileo. This one is to have a special interest in someone or something. Frequent focus on close association, have affection for, like, consider someone a friend, a liking or a strong friendship. Phileo. Hey, we have a city over here called Philadelphia. This is where they get that from. Phileo. The friendly city. I don't think it's friendly anymore, but you get the idea. The other Greek word that you will find a lot in the New Testament is AGAPE, which is Strong Concordance 26. This one is affection or benevolence. Okay. Now, the common words that you will find that are mostly used in the Old Testament are ahav, racham, and dod. Okay, and of course ahava. Now, let's see what we got here. Now, there's a verse in Hebrew, chapter 13, verse 4, which is pretty interesting, and it states, "Let marriage be respected by all, and the bed be undefiled. But Elohim shall judge those who whore and adulterers." The key word here is whore, depending on your translation, okay? In some English translation, it says sexual immoral is used instead of whore. Now, what is sexual immorality? Well, there's a lot of things to that one. It can refer to incest, homosexuality, lesbianism, etc. Anything that is not one man and one woman in holy matrimony is considered sexual immoral. Okay. Now the whole concept, the picture, the marriage is a picture of the intimacy that the individual believer can have with Yahweh. Okay. Now the whole concept of marriage itself, it is captured by agape. And I will focus a little bit more on agape in just a couple of minutes from this study. Okay. It's captured by agape. Unconditional. Okay. It is transformed by the Ruach HaKodesh, the Spirit, or the Holy Spirit. And thus is cleansed by blood. Okay. Granted, this is symbolic in nature, but is a very strong spiritual meaning behind it. And as we go to the study, you're going to see this whole picture and the beauty of it. Okay. All right, the next one, do you agape? And let us clarify a couple of things when it comes to agape. And this comes from one of particular events that occur in the New Testament. I won't spoil it, but I'll go to the verses for you. And it starts like this. When therefore they had eaten breakfast, Yahusha said to Shimon Kepa, Shimon, talking to Peter, of Jonah, do you love me more than these? And of course, he replies, he said to him, yes, master, you know that I love you. Now, Jesus here uses, granted, the English, this is what it says in the English, love, love. It doesn't make sense. Why you telling me that, do you love me, when I say, yeah, I love you, but, what are you talking about? But when you look in the text, the actual Greek text, the first, when Jesus asked Peter, do you love me more than these? What it's actually saying is using this agape term, meaning affection or benevolence. Now, there's a couple of things that you need to know about agape. And this is where we'll get into detail about the meaning of that word. First, agape is the kind of love that it is expressed not only by emotion, but by the action it prompts. Second, agape is love because of what it does, not because of how it feels. This is a misconception that we have today. We believe it's a feeling, but it's not. In this particular case, it's not. Agape is different. Third, the point is that agape love is not simply an impulse generated by feelings. Rather, it's an exercise of the will, a deliberate choice. Fourth, agape love relates to obedience and commitment and not feeling and emotion, sacrificial or unconditional. So agape, that word itself is loaded. It depends on how it's used in the context. In this case, Yeshua is asking Peter, do you agape? Pretty much is asking him all this in one word. But then Peter says something else. But before we go into into Peter's response, I have to quote 1 Corinthians 13, 4-8. And here's what it says. Agape is patient, is kind. Agape does not envy. Agape does not boast. It is not puffed up, does not behave indecently, does not seek its own, is not provoked, reckons not the evil, does not rejoice over the unrighteousness, I should say, but rejoices in the truth. It covers all, believes all, expects all, endures all. Agape never fails. So here's a huge list of what agape can do. So we're going to go down the list here. It is patient. It does not envy, which means it's not jealous. Does not boast. Okay? It's not puffed up. In other words, it's not prideful. It does not behave indecently. Or I should say rude. It does not seek its own way. In other words, not your will. It's not provoked. In other words, you're not easily angered. Reckons not the evil. In other words, it keeps no records of the wrong things you're doing. Does not rejoice over the unrighteousness. And it rejoices in the truth. It covers all. That means it never gives up. It believes all, meaning never loses faith. Expects all, always hopeful. Endures all. And of course, it never fails. Now, if you have agape, you're pretty much Yahweh. This is why this particular term is associated to only Yeshua and Yahweh. That's it. Now, we can have some of the agape, but we will not be able to maintain all of this in our condition right now. Okay, it's very hard to keep all of this up. Okay, all right, so now let's hit the response of Peter. Now that we have defined the love or agape that Yeshua is expressing to Peter, asking Peter the question, now let's see what so-called Peter is saying back to Yeshua. So this love that he's talking about, Peter, from his perspective, is no other than phileo, which is a liking or strong friendship. So here you have Yeshua asking Peter, hey, do you actually agape me? And Peter is saying, you know, I just like you like a friend, dude. That's the reply. So he asked him again. Technically, he asked a request. He said to him, feed my lambs. Okay. Then he asked him, hey, he said to him again, the second time, Shimon of Jonah, do you love me? He's using the same term again now. And Peter replies, he said to him, yes, master, you know that I love you. So again, here Yeshua is asking him again, agape. And you have, Peter is not getting it. He's still responding, hey, I just like you like a friend, Yeshua, you know? That's it. So now he said to him, shepherd my sheep. Well, take care of my sheep, you know? So here we go again. He said to him again the third time, Shimon of Jonah, do you love me? And now this time, Kepa was sad because he said to him the third time, do you love me? And he said to him, master, you know all. You know that I love you. So what kind of term of love did he use in this one? Well, if you read the Greek text, granted, he finishes up with Yeshua said to him, feed my sheep. So in this case, the love in which Yeshua is asking the question to Peter is now phileo, not agape. So Yeshua is saying, do you love me as a friend, Peter? And this is why Peter felt bad, because Yeshua changed the term from agape to phileo, because Peter did not want to technically cave in and admit or acknowledge that he agape Yeshua. Instead, he just loved them as a friend. See, if you read the English, you never understand what this conversation actually means. But when you actually transfer it or translate it correctly, then you can tell why Peter is feeling bad. This is why I like to study the text. And of course, I like to share the information with you all. All right? All right, more on agape. 3 out of the 4 Gospels, Matthew 22, verses 37 to 39, Mark 12, verse 30 to 31, and Luke 10, verse 27, Yeshua compressed the 10 commandments into 2. And now we're going to cover that. And here's Matthew 22, verse 37 to 39. And Yeshua said to him, you shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart and with all your being and with all your mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Okay. So here we have 2 terms. Well, in the English, you have love, love. Okay, so what are we talking about? What kind of love are we talking about? So here's what he is saying. According to the Greek text, the actual word that he's using here is agapeseis, which is from Strong Concordance 25, which is the root is agapo or agape. So in other words, you're going to love Yahweh, or I should say you're going to agape Yahweh with all your heart, with all your being, your life essence, and your mind. And at the same time, you're going to agape your neighbor. So let's bring the 10 commandments, shall we? And there you have it. Now, the first 4 is pretty much agape Yahweh. That's how you love Yahweh. Okay. I'm Yahweh your Elohim. You have no other mighty ones against my face. You do not make for yourself a carved image. You do not bring the name of Yahweh to naught. And we covered that on the Hashem study. Remember the Shabbat day to kadosh it. That's how you love or agape Yahweh. The other remaining commandments is how you treat your neighbor, or I should say, agape your neighbor. Respect your father and your mother. You do not murder. You do not commit adultery. You do not steal. You do not bear false witness against your neighbor. You do not covet, which is wishing for your neighbor's stuff or wishing for somebody's stuff. Okay? To agape someone as yourself is not easy, as I mentioned in the last slide. It's very hard. The common statement that we usually get is love, you know. You should be able to love whoever as long as no one gets hurt. You ever heard that one before? This shows a lack of defining and understanding what love or agape really is. And we just cover a lot of, that word is loaded with stuff. We don't know what love is. Okay. When we define love in the Western culture, it depends, it's subjective. It depends who's talking about it and in what context it is. Recall some of the attributes of agape as stated by Paul, okay? In, I think it was 1 Corinthians. Agape is patient. Agape is kind. Agape is not prideful. Agape does not rejoice over unrighteousness. Agape rejoices in the truth. And so on and so on. Now, to claim that by loving someone outside of the biblical definition of the term will not hurt someone kind of thing is a complete lie, because you will be hurting someone. This action that you claim, oh, as long as no one gets hurt, I can do whatever I want, is a selfish, it's deceptive, and it's prideful action. This is the same thing that method of thinking can be equated to suicide victim. And I know that because I went through it. Okay. In a suicide scenario, the individual believes that he or she is not wanted and will not be missed. So if you look at the red square on your right, if you do not agape yourself, then how can you agape your neighbor, or vice versa? You are not loving your neighbor because you don't love yourself. And this is why people do some crazy stuff, including suicide. Granted, that's one major factor, but there's many factors involved in a suicide, because once you hit that depression mode and you go downhill to that rabbit hole, it's very hard to jump out of it. Now, John chapter 15, verse 12 to 13 states, "This is my command, that you love," in the Greek is agape, "one another as I have loved you." Agape again. No one has greater love, agapen, than this, that one should lay down his life for his friends. Remember when I said one of the conditions is action? Agape is based on action, not feeling. Bingo. He gave his life for you and me. That is why he is perfect. He contained the whole concept of agape. We only can do a limited amount of it. Agape or agapate is Strong Concordance 25. Agafen or agapen, Strong Concordance 26. It comes from the same root, agape or agapo, depending on how you want to pronounce the vowel on the dictionary. Okay. All right, we're going to close. We got 2 more slides and we'll close it for today. Okay, the bridal relation continues. Now, one day we will stand before the bridegroom without spot or wrinkle. This is in reference to Song of Songs 4, verse 7. And it states, here's another problem with this one. In the English, "You are all lovely, my love, and not a blemish is on you." What kind of a term in the Hebrew you think it was used for lovely and love? Well, let's take a look. First one, lovely, actually is the Hebrew word Yahweh. It's Strong Concordance 3303. It actually means beautiful, fair, godly, pleasant, or well. In this case, will be beautiful. So technically, right there is a mistranslation. It should read, "You are all beautiful." Okay. Now let's take a look at the other, my love. Okay. What kind of word they use here? Right here is rayati. Now this particular dot at the end right here in the consonant of the tav is referred to in the Hebrew as the hirik, the yod hirik, which is, it makes the word my. This is where you get my love. This is my right here at the end of it. And raya is actually the term that they use for love, which is a female associate, fellow, or love. Okay. It doesn't use, what is it? Ahava is the other one that's coming, but this one is rayati. Okay. So it's a female companion kind of thing. Symbolically speaking, of course, because you're not I'm not a female. So the New Testament highlights the bridal relationship that Yahusha or Yeshua has with each individual believer. And you can find this in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 2. "For I am jealous for you with a jealousy according to Elohim. I gave you in marriage to one husband to present you as an innocent maiden to Mashiach." Now here you have the term marriage, Of course, this means betroth or engage. As you're going to find out, the Israelite Galilean wedding concept has two phases of the marriage. You got phase one being, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's just say for right now, you got two phases or two parts to the whole concept of marriage. And I will deal with it at its due time, possibly next week. Okay, for right now, at this particular stage, the meaning of that word in the Greek in marriage is pretty much you are engaged. Why? Because the wedding has not occurred yet. The next one, maiden, in the Greek pretty much means virgin. Okay. So based on this, Paul states that both male and female believers are spiritually engaged to the bridegroom, and that we are like maidens or virgins, that is spiritually, as we relate to the husband, which is Yahusha, okay, or the bridegroom kind of thing. Paul continues with another bridal relationship analogy in Romans chapter 7, verse 4, and it states, "So my brothers, you also were put to death to the Torah, to the body of Hamashiach, or Mashiach, for you to become another's," that is, married to another, "the one who was raised from the dead, that we should bear fruit to Elohim." Again, Paul states that we are married to the one who was raised from the dead. And guess who's that? That one is Yeshua or Yahusha, the Ben of Elohim, the Son of God, the Mashiach, the Anointed One. Okay, we're married to him, or we are engaged to him, to soon to be married to him. Okay, one more. Now, what is the purpose of our union in to bear good fruit? And this is a good one. Proverbs 11, verse 30. "The fruit of the righteous is the tree of Chai." Chai is Hebrew for life. Works that glorify Elohim. This is in conjunction with Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10. States, "For we are his workmanship, created in Mashiach, Yahusha, unto good works, which Yahweh prepared beforehand, that we shall walk in them." Okay, so those are the fruits of your work. So imagine it, and the fruit of the Ruach HaKodesh. Okay, this relates to Galatians chapter 5, verse 22 to 23. "But the fruit of the Ruach is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, trustworthiness, gentleness, self-control. Against such there is no instruction or Torah." Okay, I try to stay away from the term law because it seems to have in today's culture very negative overtone. Technically, the Torah or instructions, you can give instruction to historical experience. Not all the entire 5 books of Moses are laws. Okay, they're just instructions based on certain events, and you can learn from experience. Okay. Now, another passage that deals with the bridal analogy can be found in the 5th chapter of Ephesians, verses 22 to 27. And this one very often is taken out of context to validate a male authority over a woman. And you know exactly how this goes. It starts with, "Wives, subject yourself to your own husbands as the master, because the husband is head of the wife, and as also Hamashiach is head of the assembly, and he is savior of the body. But the assembly is subject to Hamashiach, or Mashiach, so also the wives be to their own husbands in every respect." Husbands, this is the one that always kind of miss out. "Husband, love your wives, as Mashiach also loved the assembly and gave himself for it, in order to kadosh it and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word, in order to present it to himself a splendid assembly, not having spot or wrinkle or any of this sort, but that it might be kodesh and blameless. Now, this word love that is being used here, again, is agapate, coming from agape. Okay, so we husbands have a heavy duty to our wives. Okay, but the assembly is subject to Mashiach, so also the wives be to their own husbands in every respect. Husband, agapate your wives, as Mashiach also agapate the assembly and gave himself for it. You see how hard that is on men to try to agapate wife? Now, if the husband loves the woman that much, the woman will have no problem submitting to the husband, because both of them will be in agreement and both of them agape each other. It's not, well, I won't say it's not hard. It can be achieved. Granted, we're not perfect. We're not going to do everything that specified in the term agapa or agapate, but we do certain things it's unconditional, it's sacrificial. Are you willing to do that for your wife? And if you do, then your wife will do the same. Okay, so we'll stop it there, and next week we'll continue on. Let